Before we get started, a modest thank you to those at Amazon for having me as a guest today to share a few stories by the fire. Greetings. I'm glad to see you in good health, Seeker. You've shown tremendous growth in the time that you've been in this world. Take a seat by the hearth. It's been some time since we last spoke of the history of Arcacia. So since we have a moment to collect ourselves, why don't we stop to spin the heroic tales of the past once more before the gates of the Dreamless Paradise are opened. Before the time of man, the laws which governed all of existence were born from order and chaos. Regulus, the god of order, created Omnium, the cosmic universe which houses many creations. To breathe life into the stars, Regulus forged the Ark, an almighty artifact which governed the power of eternity, an ever-bright flame which would never so much as flicker. In order to keep the Ark out of the vices of those who would use it for evil, he would then split it into 7 fragments, each of which held a portion of the Ark's power. Regulus then delegated the duty of fostering life in Arcacia to 7 gods of his creation, each of which possessed a fragment of the Ark. Among the races that the gods created, 3 stood out as the most powerful. The Sylvain, supreme in the art of sorcery, the Lazaneth, the only race gifted with wings of flight, and the Hal, famously cunning warriors and masters of dimensional travel. Things were peaceful for a spell, until the day that the Hal tricked their god Antares and coveted the power of the Ark for themselves. History says that their intent was to use its unbelievable power to rule over the world. In an attempt to stop the Hal, the Lazaneth and the Sylvain joined forces, but even then they were no match. In a desperate last-ditch effort, the Lazaneth infiltrated the god's domain and took their god Procyon's Ark fragment as well, in order to tip the scales in their favor. Regulus, who had taken notice, furiously passed his judgment on the guilty mortals and the gods that allowed this transgression to occur. Antares, the god of the Hal, was expelled from the god's domain. Procyon, creator of the Lazaneth, was stripped of his language and forced into eternal silence. As for the Hal, Regulus showed no mercy and wiped out their race altogether. To the Lazaneth, whom he had always shown favor towards, he punished them for their sin by crippling their wings so that they'd never take flight again. From that point onwards, the gods were forbidden from ever interacting with mortal affairs ever again, and the legend of the Ark began to fade into obscurity. The Lazaneth, filled with sorrow for the deed that they had committed, would spend the next 1,000 years praying to Regulus, begging for forgiveness. They hoped that by earning Regulus's favor once more, that they would also earn back their blessing of flight. The Lazaneth select oracles who spend their days in the Temple of Truth, weaving the threads of fate together to interpret messages from the gods above. They are able to read prophecies of the past, present, and the future. These messages are then sent to the Sword of the Lazaneths. The Sword is composed of the race's strongest warriors. It is they who govern over the Lazaneth, ensuring the peace and safety of their people. But while they fought to stop the Hal's plan of world invasion a millennia ago, nobody knows why they didn't take up arms again during Kazaros' invasion 500 years later, despite their own safety being threatened as well. Instead, the once mighty Lazaneth have been isolated away in a dreamless paradise, a pathway which had been sealed away and protected by the guardian of the sea, Alaric. After the war against the Hal, a crack formed between dimensions, bridging a link between Arcacia and the dark star Petrania. Petrania was created by Zosma, the god of chaos, and counterpart to Regulus. Zosma sought to take the Ark for himself, as nothing he could create was so everlasting as that which created all life in Omnium. However, as the demonic beings of Petrania and mortal races clashed, more cracks formed which threatened the very universe itself. Regulus became aware of this, and worried that Omnium itself would collapse, he briefly forged an alliance with Zosma to repair the damage their conflict had brought. With the power of the Ark, Regulus and Zosma put aside their embittered rivalry to create the Guardians, beings of light and darkness, order and chaos. Their sole duty was to protect Arcacia, and through their power were they able to seal away the cracks in the universe. Zosma withdrew his forces after the ordeal, and the Guardians, with their goal of maintaining balance realized, went into slumber until they were needed again. Many centuries would pass, and in that time the church state of Sacria would become Arcatia's most influential region. Their leader, Archbishop Thermer II, would discover evidence that the Ark existed, and slowly he became obsessed with the idea of obtaining it. He would not succeed in his lifetime, but his legacy would be inherited by his son, Thermer III, who would be overcome with the same obsession. The mad search for the Ark would lead to a new conflict between mortal races that would awaken the Guardians and prompt them into action once more. Even if it wasn't demons, the Guardians would make an enemy of any that would threaten Arcatia's existence, even if it was humanity. However, it was too late, and the bridge between Petrania and Arcatia was formed once more. But it wasn't Zazma that descended down to the world, but instead a new Lord of the Abyss, Kazaros, as well as his 6 generals. Zazma had been defeated in his own realm, and Kazaros became the new ruler of Petrania during that time. The Guardians turned their attention toward the demons, but even with the help of humanity, who were weakened after the war they had just ended, were losing ground moment by moment. In the final moment of peril, though, 7 heroic figures would emerge. Named after the stars themselves, the legendary party of warriors that humanity would call the Sidereals would even the odds against Kazaros and his generals. Vergris, who knew they wouldn't be able to win even with the help of the Sidereals, summoned the Ark Carrier Mystic to retrieve fragments of the Ark. The Ark was given to Lutera, the King of Knights and leader of the Sidereals, who unlocked its infinite power and used it to seal away Kazaros' corporal form within Mount Antares. Kazaros would detach his soul from his body and escape back through the bridge to Petrania, vowing that he would one day reunite with his body and finish what he had started. This brought an end to the historic Chain War, a name which represented the terrible back-to-back wars that nearly brought an end to Arcatia. The Chain War, which only ever occurred because of human greed and obsession over the Ark, became a concern for the Sidereals, who ultimately served as humanity's saviors. In order to prevent such a thing from happening again, Lutera took the divided Ark and ordered each of the Sidereals to hide a fragment somewhere no one else would know. Should the world be jeopardized again, a Seeker would be born who would bring together the fragments of the Ark once again as they did. 500 years of prosperity would then pass, the passage of time which mended the damage from the Chain War and led to the growth and development of humanity. During this time, civilizations would establish such as Arthetine, Anika, and Vern, as well as other notable events such as the emergence of the vengeful Delaine and the downfall of the mighty kingdom of Lutera. No matter your origin, you found yourself summoned at the place that observes all Trixian. The winged Lazeneth Beatrice, who oversees everything in Omnium, tasked you with the heavy burden of locating and gathering the 7 fragments of the Ark hidden by the Sidereals. Your role as the Seeker began here. Along the way, you met many allies that proved invaluable in your journey, but for every ally you made, you also came face to face with a devilish adversary. Your adventure led you to the Ark of Trust, Asta, hidden by the late King Lutera. His parting message to you reminded you that the fate of Arcatia may very well depend on your success in this mission. Sailing east, you arrived at the origin place of the Makoko. Here, your courage to stand up for the helpless earned you the trust of the great giant Tortoig, who granted you the Ark of Creation, Ortus, hidden by the Lazeneth Sidereal Nineveh. In Anika, you met the martial artist Wei, the successor of the late Sidereal Sien. After losing his master's side to the great demon Dochul, Wei inherited the role of keeping Dochul at bay sealed within his arm, and came to terms with his destiny to fight for the light and aid you on your journey to defeat the impending darkness. In Arthetine, you diffused a difficult political situation between the leaders of its dystopian capital. The remaining leaders in the aftermath of the turmoil gave you the Ark of Prescience, Agaton, which had been hidden by the Sidereal Galator within the Eye of Skeptrum. In the central continent of Vern, you fought with the ancient necromancer Sigmund, during which you briefly encountered the leader of the Solar Guardians, Vergris, Vergris, who recognized you as the destined seeker, imparted to you that the balance between light and darkness was collapsing, and that it was the duty of the Guardians to lead Arcacia into a state of rebirth to save it. He mentioned that should you, the Seeker, wish to make a case for the continued existence of mankind, that you should travel to the Dreamless Paradise and meet with him there to state your case. Traveling north brought you to the frigid tundra of Shushire, which was frozen over by the god of ice, Sirius, in an attempt to destroy all of Zosma's invading demons 1,000 years prior. You navigated through the maze of mirrors, where you confronted the Legion General and Lord of Plague, Akan. Akan, whose body is ever rotting, sought the power of the Ark in order to obtain a greater body that would never decay. Repelling him earned you the Ark of Hope, Elpon, which was hidden there by the sidereal Shandy. By instruction of the Queen of Vern Aelin, you sailed west to the Sylvain capital city Rothun to meet with the Queen of Rohendel and Sylvain's sidereal Azena, who shares a body with her sister Inanna after an event from centuries past destroyed the latter's physical form. Unusual happenings led you to uncover the illusory manipulations of the different masters of Rohendel by the Phantom Legion General Belshazzar. After navigating through her palace and defeating her with the aid of Azena and Inanna, the Will of the World Tree entrusted you with the Ark of Wisdom, Ratik. Traveling south to Yorn, you met the mighty dwarven race of the Umar and investigated the strange disappearance of its citizens. This venture brought you together with the successor to Sidereal Galator's legacy, his descendant Balthor. Overcoming the hellish sword of Velcruz, you earned a dependable ally of the world's finest blacksmiths. Finally, as you traveled to Phaeton, you met with the Avesta, a syndicate organization of Delain. A product of humanity being corrupted by demonic influence, the Delain are frequently oppressed by the remnants of Sacria for being perceived the same as demons. After resolving the matters between them and a dispatch of missionaries from Sacria, you hurried to the Dark Rain Plains, where the red moon of Kazaros had risen. Demonic forces from Petrania poured out, headed by the most dangerous of the Legion Generals, Thamine. The combined forces of the Delain and the now allied Sacrian forces allowed you to repel the demons, but not without casualties. The fallen leader of the Avesta, Zyka, left you a letter to seek out the sixth Ark, the Ark of Devotion, Karta, which was hidden in Phaeton by the sidereal Cien. What remained was the final fragment of the Ark, which was hidden away by the sidereal Kadan. You managed to track his location down to Asteri Village, a remote island village which came under sudden ambush by chaotic guardians. Together, you were able to defeat them and protect the local villagers of the remote island, motivating Kadan to resume his plans. However, before he leaves to continue his own mission, he whispers to you an ominous warning. Do not trust the Lazaneth. With the Legion Generals touching down on Arcacia collectively once more after the Senate were tricked to lift the barrier that had protected South Vern, Kazaros' impending return to his physical body seems all but certain. Thus, the sidereal allies that you've gathered have put all their hope in you locating the final fragment of the Ark in the Dreamless Paradise, Algacia, homeland of the Lazaneth, as the combined powers of the Ark is the only weapon known to be able to defeat the Lord of the Abyss. As you prepare for your journey to seek out the final fragment of the Ark, many thoughts linger in your mind. What happened in Algacia 500 years ago? Why didn't they help the other mortal races during the Chain War? If the rest of the Lazaneth didn't help humanity, why did Nineveh? Why is the passage to their homeland sealed away in the first place? Look at the time. It's about time for you to depart. You have a meeting soon with Nineveh, don't you? The story continues as soon as you open the gate to the Dreamless Paradise. As for me, I think I'll just rest here by the fire. Hurry along now. The truth awaits you in the sky.